Greetings, tankers. This is Psyberius here, and I'm presenting the STA-1 for your enjoyment. Starting at Tier 8, because the early tiers are easy for anybody really to hop into and kind of figure out where they're at. Good guns, not so great armor, so-so mobility. Kind of like about like a lot of the other tanks in the early tiers. The tiers consolidate at Tier 5, where it goes to just mediums, the light line disappears, and you've got the Chi-Nu at Tier 5, the Chi-To at Tier 6, and the Chi-Ri at Tier 7. These all being World War II tanks, and because Japan really didn't have a lot of land war going on, there wasn't a lot of R&D and resources put towards tank warfare. It was all put towards their planes and ships and such. Those are the things Japan's famous for during the war. So you got a lot of tanks that there's not a lot of metal armor because they needed them for the ships. The guns are good. There's not a lot of speed because they didn't want these things sucking up a lot of fuel that could be used on planes and things instead. So for a lot of practical reasons, these tanks aren't particularly impressive when compared to their counterparts in tiers 5 through 7. So they're just not really that impressive. But at Tier 8, you get the first post-war design, and I put this here in this video here kind of to sort of dangle the carrot for those players in 5 through 7. Stick with it, or free XP through it like I did, or whatever you got to do, because this tank really shines. I like this tank a lot. This has become one of my favorite Tier 8 mediums. Between this, the Pershing, the T-44, I mean, they're solid tanks. What this lacks in armor, it makes up for in gun handling and penetration, and also in camo rating. This thing hides about as well as the T-44, and I suspect actually better. There's places I've hidden in this thing where I don't think I would have gotten away with it in the T-44. But yeah, so you got this here, and stat-wise, it's a very good tank. You see, just looking at the meters, I mean, the protection says it for itself, and looking at the hull armor, there's your 45, 35, 25, turret armor, 70, 60, 35. That's not really going to stop anything at Tier 8. It's just not. So the armor is not to be relied on. Your weight is pretty good, your engine power is pretty good, you can see for yourself as your numbers. It's got a good speed limit, not the best, but it does have good acceleration and it will hit its top speed rather quickly. And thanks to the suspension and the good terrain resistance values, it really kind of glides over a lot of things well. It's kind of like having the hull of a Centurion in terms of its suspension gear. You've got excellent traverse speeds at 44 and 42 respectively. You got 260 view range, which is very good. Now you get into the gun. The gun is really, between the suspension and the gun, this is what makes it a really sharp and smooth tank to play. The rate of fire 8.57, which is very good. Your penetration numbers, which are off the charts for a Tier 8 medium, 219, 275, and even 45 for HE is pretty good. It's enough to pen another STA, well, for what that's worth. And then you get your average damage numbers of 225 for your armor piercing and your heat rounds, and 270 for your high explosive. Now, the dispersion looks not so good at 0.35. And indeed, I think many players expect that it would be 0.32, 0.34, 0.33, somewhere in that range. But it's not that bad. With an aim time of 2.3 and the ability of the suspension to help keep the reticle bloom under control, it's more accurate than it sounds. This is a case of where I think that the tank feels better than it looks on paper. But I want to let's look at Armor Inspector here, and we'll pull this out. This is the latest update to Armor Inspector, by the way. Hence the legacy coloration that I've gone back to, and have introduced a few other little tweaks and whatnot to make this a little bit more user-friendly and give us some familiarity with the interface that we once know and loved. So you'll see this thing is pretty much all green. Anything will pen it. And if you want to look at the pen numbers up top, is your effective 70 armor up front due to the angling. 75 on the lower plate. It's actually a little stronger, which is a little bizarre, but in either regard, you don't really want to rely on it. Even if you're using all 10 degrees of this gun depression, you can sort of bounce stuff off that upper glacis, so if you can get in a situation like this, do so. Other than that, you're not really going to be able to count on that much. And speaking of gun depression, don't do this. The reason why you don't want to do this is if you look at the value on the bottom, that's +2. Your gun will only go down as +2 gun elevation. So all of you potatoes out there that want to go into battle in reverse, I'm sorry, it's just not going to be as effective as you think. Spin that back around so it doesn't look so silly. But moving around the tank, you look at those armor values, 61, 41, 35, 55. I mean, it's not well armored. 20, 11. I mean, it's you're done. Don't get in front of ISUs. So that's kind of that, and I kind of just wanted to show that off just to kind of drive the point home. I mean, even if you want to try to fire anything at this gun mantlet, yes, it's 180, 124, depending about where you hit it. But even that's nice bright green. It's not very thick. It does function somewhat as spaced armor, but it's not going to save you. Do not try to rely on the mantlet. You're asking for a whole world of hurt. Unfortunately, I don't know if you saw that on there, but the module information is not yet provided by WG, so I wasn't able to really show exactly where all the modules are in there. But everything's packed in pretty tight, and it really doesn't matter. You get hit, you're gonna suffer. It's the only real caveat to this tank, but it really is pretty great in all other respects. So up next, I'll have some gameplay, and I'll have a little bit of commentary over it. I'll try not to get into map tactics and try to keep it to the tank, and hopefully you guys can at least kind of get that commander's seat view of kind of what this thing looks like to play in above average hands. So that'll be coming up next. Alright, so for the next game, there's myself and Gusman, platooned up against Paul and Alphabet on Red. This was during some of our countdowns on our TeamSpeak server, and kind of just having a bit of fun shooting at each other. And I kept this game specifically because it shows off the camouflage and sort of some of the mid-range abilities of this tank in terms of its gun. Other than that, it's a fairly run-of-the-mill game. There's nothing too terribly exciting here. You get to see me kind of use it in an opportunistic sort of way and just kind of keep out of harm's way and put shots in, which is what this tank does. And Guzman steals my shrub, but no biggie, there's another shrub over here. In fact, I even consider thinking about being cheeky and getting up on the hill and maybe seeing what I can spot there without being spotted myself, but I think better of it because I know that the consequences will be harmful if their mediums and their TD come up here. I am fully expecting their SU to be hiding in that corner. Surprised I don't see their mediums. I go around the pipe, but I can quickly put the gun on target even at this range and go ahead and put shots in. Now I've lost my spotter, but even moving a bit into the bush, at this range I'm not spotted. He still has binocs up. I put another shot in, backing up expecting to be spotted, but still not spotted. And that's the camo of this tank. Yes, I'm using the shrub, but still, that's pretty impressive, and I don't know that I could have pulled that off in a T-44. Perhaps I'm wrong, but this has great camo. So, but you can see I'm looking around for opportunistic shots with this thing. And I know my platoon mate Guzman has worked his way down around the other side of the buildings, and I don't even have to swing my barrel over there or swing the screen over to see where he's at, because I can tell by where they're aiming. Keeping an eye on that Jagd Panther 2, and it's just that easy. I mean, granted it's a tier 6, but, you know, he can damage me, and he just never had the chance. I do hang out there a little too long, and Alphabet kind of teaches me a bit of a lesson on that. And at this point I realize that Paul's coming around in his shiny new Löwe, but I've got enough accuracy I can track him out in the open like that and just put shot in after shot in. And even with this Jagd Panther too, you can see the accuracy of this gun and the penetration value. It goes right in through that upper hull, even though he's back angled a little bit. The gun's just really sweet like that. I was kind of hoping that maybe Alphabet had pushed forward a little bit, but no such luck. He knows he's in a good strong spot up there, and he's going to hold it as best he can, and that's going to be his best chance at a last stand up there. I also want to take a minute to apologize for blowing up Paul's Löwe. Paul, those shells were filled with love. I just want you to know that. Nothing but love. And the rest of this game, there's not too much more to it. I mean, we all kind of circle in and do our evil medium dance around the heavy. But hopefully you've gotten to see through this, like, even bouncing over the terrain. I mean, that reticle just doesn't really bloom much. I mean, granted that my top speed, I'm not cooking along at 50k plus, kilometers an hour. Yeah, that came out wrong. 50 plus kilometers an hour. So that certainly helps because its top speed's kind of low. But even bouncing around through terrain, the reticle just doesn't really bloom. It's pretty consistent. And it's that consistency that really helps make this tank what it is. That's about it for this video. The damage wasn't too spectacular. It was about 2,000 or so. But hopefully you got a chance to see the camo and a little bit of its longer range capabilities and kind of how it should be played. Okay, so here's the last game, and once again it's on Himmelsdorf. I swear I see this map every other battle. But here it is in a tier 10 match, rather, with a couple of tier 9s, and I'm the only tier 8 on my team. This is one of the worst case scenario kind of things you're going to see in this tank, and I put this game up for a reason. I just wanted to show that this tank can be very competitive, even in tier 8. Now, this battle does kind of start off with a very rocky start, and a little bit of raging, and a little bit of other foolery. But the point really is to see that this tank can function in this tier, even though your damage isn't all that high and you've got no armor. And all 5 of their team push with a 6th in the back. And their 7th player, we'll find out a little later on, is actually AFK, which is probably a good thing because I think we would have gotten rolled if that were the case, because the AFK is actually, well, I won't ruin it. You'll see when we get there. And our Leo PTA is gone. I calmly correct my E5 and let him know that there's actually 5 reds over here, not 3. It was not 3-on-3 as he had hoped. So I'm going to let our T-54 and that E4 kind of try to hold that line, and this will afford me the opportunity to flank, because that's what this tank does. I do not have the armor to even pretend to try to hold that choke point. This tank's not really about holding choke points, it's about just beating opponents back with your DPM and penetration, and doing so without being seen if you can help it. So our Object 268 is over here, and he's finishing off the T-44, which turns out he is our winner for AFK of the battle. And as I said earlier, fortunately, that was a good thing, because it started us off in a fair fight of 6-on-6, given how fast our Leopard was liquidated. Kind of go for the tracking shot. I don't get it, but I'm able to put damage in. That's with an AP round. Right here, you're going to see me fire my one and only heat round, because the Object 268's front pike is very trollish, and I don't want to risk it. Now, there is a bit of a mistake coming up here, and it isn't that I shoot the tracks where I should probably have shot the side. I should have kept going and going around behind the E100, because I end up getting shot by the Pershing, who sees me cut through the courtyard. I also should have again aimed for the side of the turret, because I would have guaranteed a penetration with the AP rounds. I fire at the engine, and I probably should have gone for the tracking shot there. So yeah, there's a few mistakes there tactically, but you can see that this gun just pens an E100 with his AP rounds with no problem. Incidentally, because you rarely have to use its premium ammunition, if you don't have a premium tier 8 tank, you could conceivably use this to make money, especially if you're on a premium account. A tank doesn't do that bad, especially if you can manage to win more games than you lose, of course, and not take damage. There's this camouflage in action right there. He didn't even see me coming. And the Pershing does, but I can finish him so he can't circle behind my 268. And again, I can repeat the process and create crossfire again on the Patton. And that's really what this tank is about. Notice, especially here on Himmelsdorf, we're creating those 90-degree crossfire situations where you just get these tanks trapped in intersections, and that's that. So that is the STA-1. I hopefully was able to demonstrate kind of what this tank can do. I realized I didn't get it into a lot of places that were very hilly to really show off the 10 degrees of gun depression. I do have a couple more games, but in the interest of trying to keep this video relatively short, I didn't want to go too overboard. But hopefully you got to see some examples of what it can do at range, how it does with camouflage, and its DPM and everything else, and how the rest of the package works pretty well to mitigate its armor factor or lack of. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, maybe learned something. Keep the track side down and the armor side up, and I hope to see you out there.